You're leaving this world tomorrow, Mom. I'll inherit everything. The words hit me like a blade. I set down my tea slowly, letting the cup tremble in my hands. I hear her voice again, sharp, sure, filled with greed I thought only existed in stories. Emily, my daughter, speaking as if she owns me, my life, everything I'd built. I smile. A soft, bitter smile. You forgot one thing, I say, my voice quiet but steady. What thing, Mom? She asks, unaware that I already know her answer, her plan, her heart. I already left, the moment you sold your heart to money. Silence on the other end. I can almost hear her confusion. A flicker of doubt. But it is quickly buried under arrogance, that same arrogance I've seen grow inside her for years. I hang up the phone, but the chill in the room does not fade. The mansion is too still, the shadows too long. The portraits on the wall seem to watch me, images of Emily as a child, laughing, trusting me, believing in me. And now, she is gone from those images. Replaced by someone I do not recognize. I walk slowly to the window, looking at the darkened grounds outside. The wind moves through the trees, whispering secrets. I know she thinks she has everything under control, but she has no idea what is coming. She does not know the people who have been waiting, or the consequences that will reach her before the sun rises tomorrow. I sit back down, my hands folded in my lap. My mind moves like a clock ticking, thinking of all the years I raised her, all the sacrifices I made. And now, the very heart I nurtured has betrayed me. But I am not afraid. Not yet. Because even in betrayal, a mother's mind can see what others cannot. And I can already see, the storm she has set in motion will come for her as much as it comes for me. Emily, my daughter. Once, she was the light of this house. Bright eyes, soft laughter, the kind of stubborn curiosity that made every day feel alive. I remember her tiny fingers curling around mine as she learned to walk, the way she'd look up at me with complete trust, as if I held the entire world in my hands. Those were innocent days, full of promise and love. But time changes everything. The child I held, the girl who trusted me with her heart, slowly began to drift into shadows I did not recognize. It began with small things, little lies, borrowed money she could not repay, secrets kept from me. I told myself it was just youth, a fleeting phase of rebellion. I told myself patience would guide her back, that love would steer her straight. But I was wrong. Emily's world grew louder, brighter, and more dangerous. She surrounds herself with people I do not know, people who nod at her every word, laugh at jokes I cannot hear, who whisper in her ear and tell her she is invincible. They see her money, her charm, her recklessness, and they take it as permission to manipulate her. And she allows it, oblivious to the shadows trailing behind each step she takes. I see her in the nightclubs, the flashing lights reflecting off sequined dresses, the pounding music shaking the floors, spilling over into the quiet of our world. She dances without care, drinks without thought, laughs without meaning. Every smile she gives feels like a transaction, every gesture calculated to impress someone, to prove herself. And she thinks this is life, she thinks this is freedom. She does not see the danger creeping closer, silent and patient. I remember her childhood stubbornness, the way she would demand her own way in the smallest matters, how she refused to listen when I tried to guide her. I indulged her then, hoping patience could teach her lessons softly. But patience is not enough when the heart is hardened by desire. Desire for things that do not last. Desire for approval she cannot earn, for respect she has not earned, for wealth that cannot fill the emptiness she feels inside. She has grown into someone I do not recognize. The daughter who once whispered secrets to me at bedtime, the one who clung to me after nightmares, the one who believed love was enough, she is gone. Replaced by a woman who measures people by what they can give her, who counts money more carefully than kindness, who chases attention like a moth to a flame, unaware that the flame will burn her. And yet, I cannot hate her. A mother's heart does not turn off, even when betrayed. I watch her from the shadows, unseen, knowing her every move. I see her texting the wrong people, laughing at jokes that hide malice, trusting strangers who wait for her to falter. And she does not see them. She does not feel the weight of their eyes, the patience of those who wait for a single misstep. I think of the night she returned from one of her parties, arms weighed down with shopping bags, heels clicking against the marble floors of her home, hair slightly disheveled from hours of dancing. She tossed the bags aside, barely noticing the small tear in her favorite dress. I asked her simply, "Are you safe?" And she waved me away. "I'm fine, Mom," she said. But the way her eyes flicked toward the door, the way her fingers fidgeted with her phone. I knew. I knew she was already entangled in something larger than herself. Emily has always been reckless. Recklessness in youth can be forgiven. But now it is dangerous. It is a thread that can unravel everything she believes she owns. I have seen shadows she cannot see, threats she does not understand. And tomorrow those shadows will move, whether she is ready or not. I recall the afternoons when she would argue with me over the smallest things, throwing tantrums because life did not bend to her will. I remember the stubborn defiance in her eyes, the fire in her words. Those same eyes now glitter with ambition, with hunger, with greed. She mistakes these things for strength. She does not yet know that greed blinds, that hunger consumes, that ambition without wisdom leads straight into ruin. I have followed her in secret, quietly observing the patterns she does not notice. The way she laughs too loudly with friends who speak too softly behind her back. The way she makes promises she cannot keep. The way she looks at money, at luxury, at power, and forgets what love means. I have tried to reach her, with words, with gestures, with quiet lessons of patience. But she pushes away the truth in favor of the glitter that dazzles her eyes. And I remember the people I once helped, people who have a debt to me. I wonder if she realizes how the kindness I gave can return in ways she cannot imagine. She is unaware that those she trusts now may not be what they seem. She is unaware that her arrogance, her confidence, her recklessness, they are all threads leading her into a web. A web I have already glimpsed, a web whose strands are already tightening. Yet, despite the danger, despite the betrayal, I do not close my heart. Even now, I feel love, even now I feel sorrow, even now I mourn the girl she once was. I mourn her innocence, her laughter, her trust. But I also feel the weight of what is to come. Because the choices she has made, the path she walks, and the people she trusts, they all lead to a moment of reckoning. A moment she is not ready for, and a moment she cannot escape. I sip my tea again, its warmth gone long ago. I hear the faint sounds of music from her world, the nightclubs, the friends, the chaos she thinks is life. I hear them, and I know that soon the music will stop. I know that soon the reckoning will arrive, and the world she built on sand will collapse. And when that day comes, she will remember her mother. She will remember the lessons she refused to hear. She will remember the heart she sold for gold. Emily is my daughter. I loved her once, with every piece of me. I still love her, in the quiet, in the shadows, in the spaces where hope lingers. But I see what she has become. I see the greed, the recklessness, the arrogance. And I know, when tomorrow comes, she will face consequences she cannot imagine. And I will be here, waiting, watching, knowing that love, even betrayed, is never powerless. I was not born into wealth. I built everything with my own hands, with my own decisions, and with a heart that believed the world could be better if kindness mattered as much as ambition. Every business I started, every risk I took, every sleepless night I endured, it was for a future where my family could live safely, comfortably, and with dignity. I remember the first shop I opened, small, dusty, barely enough customers to cover the rent. I spent every evening counting coins, praying that I could pay my employees on time, praying that I could make a difference in their lives. I did not know then that the same determination would one day shape the life of my daughter, the same determination that would teach me the cost of trust. As I grew, my businesses grew. Factories, shops, properties across cities. People came to me for work, for advice, for help when life had abandoned them. I gave, not because I expected repayment, but because I believed in something stronger than money, loyalty, gratitude, and love. I gave to those who asked, and even to those who did not. Sometimes, I lent without asking questions. Sometimes, I helped families in ways that no one would ever remember. I did not do it for fame or praise. I did it because it was right. I recall one family in particular, a man, sick, struggling to pay hospital bills, his children barely old enough to understand the fear in his eyes. I helped them. Quietly, without ceremony. I gave enough to save their father's life. I never expected anything in return. At the time, I thought of them as a fleeting part of my life, a moment of human connection in a world that often forgets kindness. But life has a way of circling back. That kindness, once forgotten, would one day become the spark of danger for my daughter, though she does not know it yet. Through it all, I raised Emily. I taught her patience, responsibility, and the importance of integrity. I wanted her to know that wealth is not measured in money, but in the lives you touch and the trust you earn. I wanted her to understand that generosity does not make you weak, but wise. I wanted her to see that true success is never built on betrayal or shortcuts. And yet, as she grew, I saw the same recklessness I feared. I saw her chasing glitter instead of substance. I saw her choosing admiration over understanding. I saw her measuring relationships in coins and favors, forgetting the lessons I tried to instill. I tried to guide her gently, tried to correct her course with stories, examples, even gentle warnings. But she only heard what she wanted. She could not see the world as it truly is, a place where kindness is sometimes repaid with greed, and trust is sometimes betrayed. I remember sitting in my office late one night, the city lights reflecting in the windows, thinking of all the people I had helped, all the choices I had made. I wondered if my generosity had been a mistake. Could it be that those I lifted from despair would one day come back with knives hidden in their hands? I shook my head and whispered to myself, no, the world is not evil. It is merely a mirror of the hearts we choose to trust. And sometimes, the reflection is darker than we imagine. Emily was unaware of these reflections. She believed the world would always bend to her will, that money and charm could shield her from consequences. She had no idea that some of the people I had helped, the ones who remembered gratitude, but also remembered pain, were watching, waiting for the right moment. They knew me, they knew my ways, and they knew the consequences of betrayal. And though Emily thought herself untouchable, she had already stepped into a web I had once glimpsed in shadows, a web that was tightening without her knowing. Through it all, my heart remained the same. I loved my daughter fiercely. I loved her with patience, with forgiveness, with hope that one day she would see the truth. I gave her everything I had, wisdom, wealth, love, and still, she chose recklessness. She chose desire over understanding, admiration over humility, greed over gratitude. And now, the consequences of those choices are coming closer. I look back at my life not with regret, but with clarity. Every act of kindness, every risk, every sacrifice has led to this moment. And I know that the same lessons I tried to teach Emily, patience, integrity, love, will be tested in ways neither of us can fully understand yet. Because when tomorrow comes, all the choices we have made, all the hearts we have touched or ignored, will come into collision. And the daughter I raised, the girl I loved, will finally learn that wealth can buy everything but trust, loyalty, and the protection of a mother's heart. Emily had grown confident in her illusions. She believed herself untouchable, cleverer than the world, sharper than anyone who might stand in her way. I had watched her from afar, and I could see it in every flick of her wrist, every glance at her phone, every smile she flashed at the wrong people. She was building a plan, thinking it brilliant, unaware that it was fragile, held together by nothing more than arrogance and borrowed loyalty. She moved through the nightclubs as if she owned them, her laughter louder than the music, her eyes brighter than the neon lights. She made deals with men who had no right to trust her, promised favors she could not keep, and surrounded herself with those whose loyalty was measured in gold, not conscience. They did what she asked, not out of respect, but because they calculated what they could gain from her indulgence. And she did not see it. She never saw the shadows in their eyes, the patience in their smiles, the hunger behind their hands. I remember the night she first spoke of the plan. She leaned back in her leather chair, phone pressed to her ear, plotting with people I had never met, people I would never trust. Her voice was smooth, practiced, rehearsed. She spoke of assets, of transfers, of ownership, as though life itself could be reduced to contracts and signatures. Confidence oozed from her every word. Arrogance danced in her laugh. She believed herself untouchable. She believed she had outsmarted me. Emily had no idea that greed is never subtle, and arrogance is never hidden. It radiates, like heat from a fire, visible to anyone who knows how to watch. And I watched. I saw the way she thought herself clever, but cleverness alone is never enough. I saw her mistakes forming in the small, unnoticed moments, a hesitation in a message, a slip of trust, a glance that lingered too long on the wrong face. These were cracks in her plan, invisible to her, but visible to anyone who has learned patience in the hard school of life. She made contact with the wrong people first, people from her nightlife, from the circles where loyalty is cheap and danger is cheaper. They smiled at her confidence, flattered her ego, told her she was brilliant, that she would succeed. And she believed them, the way a child believes a magician can make the impossible appear. I could almost see the threads of their plan wrapping around her, invisible, tightening with every boast, every laugh, every careless word. She had no idea that some of the people she hired already had their own agendas, that some knew more than she thought, that some had memories longer than her attention span, memories of debts owed, of kindnesses ignored, of trust misused. She moved among them like a queen, unaware that kingdoms built on sand rarely last. I watched her arrange meetings, whispers, secret calls late into the night. Her friends, the ones she thought loyal, watched her in silence, calculating, measuring, waiting. And she did not see it. She believed that money could bind people, that charm could control hearts, that arrogance could protect her from consequences. But the truth is simpler: greed invites danger, and arrogance draws it near. She laughed at my warnings, brushed aside my advice, called me cautious, old-fashioned, out of touch. She believed she was cleverer than her own mother, unaware that wisdom does not scream. Wisdom observes, waits, and strikes only when necessary. I allowed her this illusion. I allowed her to believe she was in control. Because sometimes, letting someone walk freely toward the edge teaches more than warnings ever could. I saw the way she handed instructions to those she trusted from her nightlife, names, places, times, contacts, all meant to manipulate, to move my world into her grasp. She was meticulous, precise, obsessed with timing, thinking she had mastered every detail. And yet, in that precision, she had overlooked the smallest cracks, the tiniest betrayals, the shadows moving quietly around her. She had forgotten one truth: the world is never empty of eyes that remember. The world is never empty of hearts that do not forgive. Emily's confidence was her armor, her arrogance her weapon. But both were hollow. I could see the moment when that armor would fail, when that weapon would turn against her. And I knew, as I always knew, that the path she had chosen, the path of greed, manipulation, and betrayal, was also a path to danger. And I waited. Not with fear, but with understanding. Because I knew what she did not yet know, that even the most careful plan can unravel in a single misstep, and the people you trust most are often the ones who will shape your downfall. She believed herself untouchable. She believed her cleverness was enough. She did not see the web tightening around her, spun not by me, but by the echoes of a past she never knew existed, by the debts of kindness long forgotten, and by the consequences of a heart sold for gold. I could almost hear the laughter behind the doors she did not lock, the whispers behind the walls she thought were safe. The night was alive with the plan she did not understand, moving, patient, waiting for the moment to strike. And she was blind to it, confident in her brilliance, arrogant in her power. Emily was walking toward a reckoning she could not yet see. And when the dawn came, when the first move was made, she would realize that confidence is not safety, and arrogance is not protection. And I would be ready to watch, to wait, to know that even the most reckless of hearts will someday learn the price of betrayal. They were waiting. Patient, quiet, moving through shadows that Emily could never see. They were not criminals by nature, not by upbringing, but by circumstance, shaped by the debts of life and the long memory of injustice. They remembered her, Margaret, the woman who had once reached into their lives and saved their father when the world had turned its back. It was years ago. Their father had been gravely ill, the bills piling higher than the hope in his eyes. The hospital had threatened, the doctors had warned, and the family had nowhere to turn. And then Margaret had appeared. Calm, generous, precise. She had offered help without expectation, without ceremony, without hesitation. She had lent enough money to save their father's life. It was not just money, it was time, it was hope, it was a second chance. They had been children then, small eyes wide with gratitude, unaware of the complexity behind her kindness. But they never forgot. And now, years later, that same kindness had become a source of bitterness, because they had seen what her life allowed her daughter to do. They had seen Emily's arrogance, her greed, her manipulation. And they wondered, would this woman, so generous to our father, truly deserve what she had now? There was a conflict in them, a war of hearts. Part of them remembered gratitude, the life she had saved, the kindness she had shown. Part of them remembered humiliation, the world's cruelty mirrored in the daughter who had grown spoiled, entitled, reckless. Could they strike without conscience? Could revenge truly outweigh the debt of kindness that had once been life itself? They debated, whispered, argued in the shadows. One said, "She saved my father. We owe her." Another said, "And yet her daughter flaunts what we have suffered. If we do not act, who will hold them accountable?" Their voices trembled with anger, confusion, fear. They were not evil. They were not cruel. They were human, balancing justice and vengeance, morality and necessity. But necessity won over hesitation. They knew the timing had to be perfect. Margaret had to be captured without warning, before she could anticipate the danger. And Emily had already set the stage herself. By trusting the wrong people, by flaunting arrogance, by believing herself untouchable, she had given them leverage, unknowingly guiding them toward their plan. They planned meticulously, calculating each move like a chess game. The location where Margaret would be alone, the timing when the house would be quiet, the routes to escape unseen. Every detail mattered. They rehearsed in silence, their hearts pounding with the weight of their decision, knowing that each action carried irreversible consequences. Flashbacks haunted them. They remembered Margaret's face as she had helped their father, the calm, almost maternal reassurance in her eyes. They remembered nights when their father had spoken of her generosity, nights when they had clutched her hands as if she could hold their world together. And now, the irony of their mission weighed heavily on them, to harm someone who had once been a savior. "We are not monsters," one whispered, almost to convince himself. "We are merely correcting a wrong." But morality is never simple. They wondered if there was another path, a way to confront Emily without risking innocent life, a way to teach a lesson without blood. And yet, the urgency of her arrogance, her recklessness, demanded action. She had become a beacon, drawing consequences that were beyond her understanding. Every night, they reviewed the plan. Maps, schedules, surveillance, the tiniest details of Margaret's routine. They knew her habits, the way she walked through her gardens, the timing of her tea, the moments she allowed herself to be alone. All of it was woven into their plan, silent and patient, like a storm waiting to strike. The tension was unbearable. They moved like shadows, communicating in whispers, their hearts heavy with guilt, excitement, and fear. They knew that tomorrow would change everything. That one action would ripple through the lives of 3 people, Margaret, Emily, and themselves. And yet, they could not stop. They could not wait. The reckoning had to come, shaped by the past, by greed, and by consequences long ignored. They watched Emily from afar, noting how she believed herself untouchable, how she laughed with her friends, how she plotted her own schemes without understanding that her arrogance had already invited danger. They smiled grimly, knowing she had guided them unknowingly. Every plan she had made, every careless word, every trust misplaced, it had all built the path that led to Margaret's capture. And as the night stretched on, they prepared, mentally and emotionally, for what they must do. They knew the moral cost. They knew the risk of failure. But they also knew that sometimes, to correct the wrongs of the past, the present must be reshaped in ways that are uncomfortable, painful, and irreversible. And when dawn came, when the first steps were taken, they would act. Quiet, precise, unrelenting. The debt of the past, the recklessness of the present, it would collide. And Margaret, brilliant, patient, unsuspecting, would be caught in a web she could never imagine. And Emily would discover that arrogance and greed are never invisible, and that the consequences of betrayal often arrive before the sun rises. Emily believed she was in control. She had arranged the meeting carefully, thinking she had orchestrated every detail, every step, every outcome. She smiled as she typed messages, instructed the people she trusted, and rehearsed what she would say. Confidence dripped from her words, arrogance filled the spaces between her breaths, and in that arrogance, she did not see the danger lying just beyond her vision. I watched her from a distance, hidden in the quiet, noting every move, every glance, every decision. She believed she was clever, untouchable, untied from the consequences that had followed me all these years. She did not know that the world I had built, the lives I had touched, and the debts quietly accumulated had formed a network far stronger than she could imagine. She did not know that the kindness I gave could be remembered, twisted, repurposed, and used against her. The night was thick with tension. The air seemed heavier, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Lights flickered on the streets outside, reflections dancing in the marble floors of the mansion. Emily walked in and out of rooms, arranging, plotting, thinking, while her daughter's plans drew others toward a reckoning she could not yet see. Meanwhile, the shadows waited. The children of the man I had once helped were patient, silent, precise. They had studied every detail of the mansion, every habit I carried, every step I took when I moved alone. They knew when I drank my tea, when I answered the phone, when I allowed myself a moment of quiet reflection. And tonight, they moved, carefully, like whispers sliding through the cracks of the house. Emily believed she controlled the meeting. She believed she had chosen the right people, the right place, the right timing. She did not see the trap forming around her. She did not see the threads of consequence stretching taut, ready to snap. And so, she called, she texted, she arranged, thinking herself queen of a castle she had not yet fully explored, blind to the dangers lurking in the corners she ignored. I walked slowly through the house, listening, observing, anticipating. My heart beat steadily, calm, aware. I knew what was coming, not with fear, but with understanding. The people who waited outside the walls were skilled, motivated, and patient. They were fueled not by malice alone, but by a sense of justice twisted by time and circumstance. They were shadows with memories long and precise, and they had already chosen their moment. And then it happened. I felt it before I saw it, the subtle shift in the air, the faint whisper of movement, the way the shadows deepened at the edges of the hallway. Before Emily realized anything, the house was no longer as she had controlled it. Doors clicked silently, footsteps moved without sound, figures appeared where they should not have been. The plan she thought she owned had turned, silently, invisibly, against her. I was careful. Every move, every breath, every glance calculated. I did not struggle. I did not scream. I allowed the kidnappers to see only what they needed to see, a woman alone, vulnerable, yet quietly aware. My mind raced through contingencies, through possibilities, through openings they had overlooked. They thought they had control. They believed the night was theirs. But even in capture, knowledge is power. Emily, oblivious to what had just occurred, continued her preparations for a tomorrow that would not come as she imagined. She laughed with her contacts, giving instructions, unaware that the consequences of her greed and arrogance had already begun to unfold. She did not hear the subtle clicks behind walls, did not notice the movement of shadows across the marble floors, did not feel the silent counting of steps that led to my abduction. And so, in the quietest moment, I was taken. No struggle, no screams, only a measured, deliberate extraction. The world I had known, the mansion, the safety, the control, disappeared behind me. Darkness surrounded me, but I did not panic. Calm settled in me like a tide. I had known this was coming. I had anticipated it. And now, as I was moved further from the life I had built, I began to plan my next steps. For even in darkness, there is always a way. Even in capture, there is always choice. Outside, Emily laughed, unaware. Inside, the shadows whispered. The clock ticked down toward tomorrow, and every second drew the day closer, the day that would change everything. The countdown had begun, and neither mother nor daughter, nor those who moved in the shadows, could stop the inevitability of what was coming. And I thought, as I was led into the unknown, Emily will learn. She will learn that control is never complete, that arrogance blinds, and that greed invites consequences. And she will see, too late, that a mother's mind, a patient heart, and a long memory can never be fully captured or defeated. Darkness surrounds me, yet my mind is sharper than ever. I feel the walls of this place pressing close, the shadows shifting around me, the faint creak of footsteps that signal intentions I must anticipate. I am alone, yet I am not powerless. Even in the hands of those who believe they control me, I have choices, small, quiet, invisible choices that can change everything. I study them carefully. The ones who captured me, children of the man I once helped, believe themselves meticulous, precise, clever. They are patient, yes, but they are also human. I watch the way their eyes dart at each movement, the way their voices soften when they think I cannot hear, the way their hands hesitate over the simplest tasks. They do not know how much I see, how much I understand, how much I have already calculated. Each detail matters. The way they secure the door, the arrangement of their weapons, the rhythm of their patrols. I commit every step to memory, every glance, every pause, every pattern. I imagine the paths I could take, the moments I could exploit, the weakness hidden in their confidence. They believe they have the upper hand, but control is an illusion. Patience is power, and I have waited my entire life for moments like this. I begin with subtle provocations. A question, softly asked, designed to elicit information. A glance at an object that draws their attention. A sigh, a movement, a hint of vulnerability that masks awareness. Every gesture, every breath, is a tool. I learn what they value, what they fear, what they underestimate. And in their underestimation, I find openings. They move around me, assuming dominance. But I move within my mind, calculating, predicting, strategizing. Each footstep they take echoes with opportunity. I do not rush, for haste invites mistakes. I wait for the moments when arrogance makes them careless, when overconfidence opens a door that I have already noticed. I recall my life, the lessons of patience and observation that have brought me this far. I remember every person I have met, every mistake I have observed in others, every human weakness I have learned to recognize. These are my weapons. Not violence, not force, but knowledge, foresight, and strategy. They believe they are stronger because they control the present. I know the past and the mind can outweigh mere strength. You chose greed over understanding, arrogance over wisdom. And now you see what that choice costs. My voice was soft, yet it carried weight, the weight of years, of lessons taught and ignored, of trust betrayed. The kidnappers, once confident, now moved cautiously, their moral struggle evident in every step. They had followed the path of revenge, yet they had underestimated the mind they sought to manipulate. I observed them, guiding subtly, speaking carefully, turning their intentions back upon themselves. Their precision could not withstand patience. Their confidence crumbled under observation. Emily's panic grew as she realized the depth of her mistake. Every contact she had trusted, every plan she had devised, now reflected her own ignorance. The arrogance that had fueled her plotting had blinded her, and now the consequences pressed upon her like a tide she could not escape. She had wanted control, and in seeking it, she had revealed her vulnerability, her flaws, her recklessness. I guided the situation without aggression. A word here, a gesture there, a pause that revealed more than action ever could. Slowly, methodically, the captors realized they were being outmaneuvered. Every doubt I had planted, every hesitation I had encouraged, became a turning point. And in that delicate, tense orchestration, I reclaimed authority, not through violence, but through intellect, patience, and understanding human nature. The final confrontation between mother and daughter was quiet, yet charged. Words carried the weight of years, of betrayal, of love misunderstood and ignored. Emily tried to explain, to justify, to plead. But words cannot undo choices, cannot erase decisions made in arrogance, cannot rewrite the lessons ignored. And I listened, not with anger, but with clarity. The lessons had been delivered, painfully, inevitably. The kidnappers, seeing the futility of resistance, understood that their role had shifted. The revenge they had sought had been absorbed, redirected, neutralized by a mind sharper and more patient than theirs. And as they retreated, I observed with a mixture of satisfaction and solemnity, knowing that justice, true justice, had been served, not through force alone, but through foresight, understanding, and calm resolve. Emily stood before me, broken, humbled, the weight of her choices etched into every line of her face. She had sought control, wealth, dominance, and found only vulnerability, exposure, and the bitter clarity of consequences. And I, though still a mother who loved her, felt the sharp ache of lessons learned too late, of trust broken, of morality tested. And as dawn broke, the world outside unaware of the drama that had unfolded in shadows, I reflected. Life has a way of teaching lessons in ways that cannot be ignored. Greed and arrogance invite consequences. Trust and love are fragile, yet enduring. And a mother's wisdom, patience, and intelligence, when ignored, waits, silently, invisibly, inevitably, to shape outcomes that arrogance could never foresee. Emily had learned her lesson, not gently, but undeniably. And as I looked at her, I felt sorrow, and yet understanding. Because even in betrayal, even in greed, even in recklessness, there is a chance for reflection, for growth, for the recognition that some things, love, trust, integrity, cannot be bought, manipulated, or stolen. And I knew, as the first rays of sunlight touched the world, that the reckoning had arrived. The consequences had been delivered, the lesson had been learned, and though hearts were scarred, clarity had been won. The dawn brought a fragile peace, a bittersweet resolution, and a promise that wisdom, patience, and understanding endure, even when tested by betrayal, arrogance, and greed.